The soft glow of my desk lamp illuminated the neat stacks of bills and bank statements. Every month, without fail, I'd sit here, a red pen in hand, meticulously organizing my finances. Not just my own, but increasingly Ethan's. My name is Andrea, and I'm 30 years old. My older brother Ethan is 32. He's always been a handful. Charming, yes, but also prone to making choices that left him scrambling. And me, well, me picking up the pieces. It wasn't just the $50,000 inheritance I'd given him a few months back, a sum I genuinely believed would be his fresh start after a particularly rough patch. That money was meant to clear his debts, give him breathing room to find stable work, and get his family back on solid ground. But even after that monumental gesture, the habit of helping ran deep. It was a reflex almost. I'd still find myself setting aside portions of my own salary, a little extra here and there, just to make sure he and Sarah, his wife, were okay. I remember last year, before the inheritance, when Ethan was between jobs. Again, his landlord was threatening eviction. I transferred the rent money without a second thought, telling him it was a loan, of course, but knowing deep down it was more of a gift. Just get back on your feet, Ethan, I told him over the phone, trying to sound encouraging, not exasperated. We'll figure out the repayment later. Later never seemed to come. It wasn't just financial either. Family gatherings, which I usually hosted at my place in Maplewood, often turned into a subtle showcase of my support. I'd buy all the groceries, enough for everyone, making sure there were plenty of options for Lily, Ethan's 5-year-old daughter, who I adored. Andrea, you always make the best mashed potatoes, Grandma Ruth would say, oblivious to the fact that I'd spent hours cooking after a full day at work. I loved my family truly, but sometimes I longed for someone to notice the effort, to offer to chip in, or even just to say thank you in a way that felt genuine, not just polite. Being the go-to babysitter for Lily was another one of my unofficial duties. Ethan and Sarah had a habit of making last-minute plans, and my phone would inevitably ring. Andrea, could you possibly watch Lily tonight? We have this thing. It was always this thing, vague and urgent. I'd cancel my own plans, whatever they were, because Lily was sweet and deserved a stable presence, and because I loved her. Plus, it was family. You help family. That's what we were taught, drilled into us from childhood. Loyalty and support, the cornerstones. One Sunday, after one of my elaborate family dinners, I was in the kitchen, stacking dishes, when I overheard a conversation from the living room. It was Ethan's voice, low but clear. Yeah, but Andrea's always there, you know? She's our safety net. Sarah mumbled something in response, too quiet for me to catch. But then, my mom's voice cut through. She's a good kid, always has been. We can always count on Andrea. A strange cold feeling settled in my stomach. Safety net. The words echoed in my head. It wasn't the first time I'd heard something similar, but hearing it so explicitly, so casually, from my own family, felt different. It wasn't a compliment. Not really. It was an expectation. A role I'd been assigned, or perhaps had allowed myself to fall into. They didn't see me as Andrea, the person with her own dreams and struggles, but as Andrea, the reliable backup plan, the one who would always be there, no matter what. I finished stacking the dishes, the clinking porcelain sounding unnaturally loud in the sudden silence of my thoughts. The warmth of the family dinner, the laughter, the easy camaraderie. It all felt a little hollow now. A safety net, the phrase hung in the air, raising a faint, unsettling doubt about my role, about the true nature of the love and loyalty I so readily gave. Was it truly reciprocated, or was I just a convenient resource? The question, once a whisper, was starting to grow louder. The scent of roasted chicken usually filled my apartment with a comforting warmth on Sunday afternoons, a signal that another family dinner was underway. But lately, even the familiar aroma felt heavy. It had been a few weeks since I'd overheard Ethan call me their safety net, and the words had burrowed under my skin, making me hyper-aware of every interaction. This particular Sunday, Ethan, Sarah, and Lily were over, along with Grandma Ruth. I'd spent most of Saturday prepping, making sure everything was just right. As we sat around the dining table, loaded with food I'd cooked, the conversation flowed, mostly about Ethan's latest business venture, something vague about online marketing that sounded suspiciously like a pyramid scheme. Ethan was in full charming mode, laughing loudly, gesturing with his fork. He caught my eye as I was refilling Grandma Ruth's water glass. "Andrea, you really need to relax," he said, a grin playing on his lips. "Always so serious about everything, especially money." He chuckled and Sarah offered a weak, apologetic smile from across the table. My hand tightened on the water pitcher. Serious about money? I almost choked. This was the man I'd given my entire inheritance to, the one whose rent I'd covered, whose groceries I still bought, the man who saw me as a safety net. I forced a smile, a tight, artificial thing. "Someone has to be, Ethan," I managed, trying to keep my voice light. "It doesn't just grow on trees." He waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, come on, Andrea. Live a little. You worry too much. That's why you're always so stressed." He winked, as if sharing a private joke with the rest of the table. No one else said anything, but I felt the sting. It wasn't just a joke. It was a subtle jab, a way to diminish my efforts and paint me as uptight, while he, the carefree spirit, was just enjoying life. It felt like a slap in the face, a casual dismissal of every sacrifice I'd made. I excused myself to the kitchen, pretending I needed to check on something. The steam from the dishwasher felt good on my face, a welcome distraction from the heat rising in my cheeks. I took a few deep breaths, reminding myself that they were family. They didn't mean anything by it. They just didn't get art. I pushed the hurt down, plastered on another smile, and rejoined them. Harmony, I told myself, was paramount. A few days later, the sting returned, sharper this time. I was scrolling through my Instagram feed during my lunch break when I saw a series of photos posted by Sarah. There was Ethan, Sarah, and Lily, all beaming, standing in front of the world's largest ball of twine, a local roadside attraction about an hour's drive from Maplewood. The caption read, "Amazing family day trip, so much fun with my favorite people." My stomach dropped. An amazing family day trip. And I hadn't been invited. It wasn't a huge event, not a wedding or a major holiday, but it was family. A casual outing, the kind of thing where you'd expect to get a text, "Hey, we're heading to the ball of twine. Want to come?" But there was nothing. Not a word. Just the smiling faces, the clear implication that family meant them. and I was not part of that particular equation, a wave of something akin to grief washed over me. It wasn't just being left out. It was the realization that they hadn't even thought to include me, or worse, that they had deliberately chosen not to. I thought back to all the times I'd rearranged my schedule, cancelled plans, spent my money, all for them, and this was the return. I stared at the photo, the bright sun in the background, the forced cheerfulness of the caption. My fingers hovered over the screen, tempted to leave a comment, to ask why I wasn't there. But what would be the point? It would only make things awkward, make me seem needy. So I just scrolled past, a dull ache settling in my chest. That night I called James, my best friend. "Hey," I said, trying to sound normal. "How was your day?" "Pretty good," James replied, his voice warm and steady. "You sound a little off. Everything okay?" I hesitated. How much could I tell him without sounding like I was complaining about my own family? "Just feeling a bit invisible lately," I admitted, choosing my words carefully. Like I'm always there for everyone, but when it comes to me, I'm an afterthought. James listened patiently, as he always did. "Andrea, you're one of the most generous people I know," he said. "But sometimes people take advantage of that generosity if you let them. You deserve to be seen and appreciated." His words were a comfort, but they didn't erase the growing distance I felt. It was like a slow, insidious erosion, chipping away at the foundation of what I thought my family was. The safety net comment, Ethan's dismissive joke, the social media snub. Each incident was a small, almost imperceptible crack. I still loved them, of course, but the unconditional loyalty I'd always felt was starting to fray. A deeper rupture felt inevitable, a storm brewing just beneath the surface of our carefully constructed family facade. The weeks that followed the ball of twine incident were a blur of work and quiet evenings. I kept my distance, not actively avoiding my family, but not initiating contact either. The silence from their end only confirmed my growing suspicion that I was indeed an afterthought. My 30th birthday was approaching, and I'd made tentative plans with James and a couple of other friends for a low-key dinner. Nothing extravagant, just a chance to celebrate turning a new decade with people who genuinely seemed to care. It was the Tuesday before my Saturday birthday, and I was just finishing up a late meeting at work when my phone buzzed. It was Ethan. I sighed, a familiar sense of dread creeping in. I picked up. "Andrea? Hey, happy almost birthday," he chirped, his voice overly enthusiastic, a sure sign he wanted something. "Thanks, Ethan. What's up?" I asked, trying to sound neutral. "So listen, I know it's your big 3-0 this weekend, and I feel terrible even asking, but Sarah and I have this huge opportunity, like potentially life-changing. It's urgent business, totally unexpected, and it's happening Saturday night." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "We just can't miss it, and we have no one to watch Lily." My heart sank. "Saturday night?" I repeated, trying to keep the disappointment out of my voice. "Ethan, that's my birthday. I already have plans." "Oh, come on, Andrea," he pleaded, his voice shifting to that familiar, persuasive tone he used when he wanted to manipulate me. "It's just for one night. Think of it as a birthday present to me. This could really turn things around for us, you know? For all of us. And Lily adores you. She'd love to spend the night with her favorite aunt." He laid it on thick, the favorite aunt line, the promise of a better future that always seemed to be just out of reach. I pictured my quiet dinner with James, the easy conversation, the feeling of being genuinely celebrated. And then I pictured Lily's sweet face, her big eyes looking up at me. I knew if I said no, they'd probably just leave her with some random sitter, or worse, drag her along to whatever urgent business they had. What kind of urgent business? I asked, a flicker of suspicion. Can't it wait? No, no, absolutely not, he insisted, a touch too quickly. It's a networking event, very exclusive, high-stakes stuff. You wouldn't believe the people who are going to be there. This is it, Andrea. This is our big break. He sounded so convincing, so earnest. Despite the growing doubts about him, a part of me, the part that still clung to the idea of a united, supportive family, wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that this urgent business was legitimate, that he was finally turning a corner. And if my sacrificing my birthday plans could genuinely help him, then maybe it was worth it. After all, what was one night? Fine, I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. But you owe me, Ethan, big time. You're the best, Andrea. I knew I could count on you. His voice was genuinely relieved, almost giddy. We'll make it up to you, I promise. Big birthday celebration next week. Just you wait. I hung up, feeling a familiar mix of resignation and a faint, hopeful ache. Maybe this time he really meant it. Maybe this urgent business would actually be his turning point. Later that evening, as I was making dinner, I saw a text from James. Still on for Saturday? Dinner at 7? I typed out my reply. Hey, so sorry, but I actually have to babysit Lily for Ethan. He has some urgent business. Can we reschedule? I hit send, feeling a pang of disappointment. His reply came almost instantly. Oh, okay, that's a shame. Sure, let me know when works for you. His tone was polite, but I could read the underlying disappointment. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to me, Ethan was on the phone in his own living room, a wide, triumphant grin on his face. She bought it, man. Hook, line, and sinker. Said she'd watch Lily. He laughed, a boisterous, self-satisfied sound. Vegas, baby, here we come. This is gonna be epic. I spent my birthday evening on my sofa, a half-eaten bowl of popcorn beside me, Lily asleep on my lap, her small hand clutching my shirt. The TV glowed with the bright colors of a cartoon, its cheerful music a stark contrast to the quiet ache in my chest. My phone buzzed with texts from friends wishing me a happy birthday, some asking where I was. I replied vaguely, making excuses. I watched the cartoon feeling a profound sense of isolation. My friends were out celebrating, laughing, living their lives, and I was here, once again, putting my own life on hold for Ethan. I stroked Lily's hair, her innocent presence the only real comfort. I told myself it was for her, for the family, but deep down, a cold, hard knot of resentment was forming. I was oblivious to the true extent of Ethan's deception, unaware that the storm wasn't just brewing, but was already breaking, miles away, with my inheritance as its fuel. A week after my quiet birthday, the lingering disappointment still clung to me like a damp cloth. Ethan and Sarah had returned, full of vague apologies and promises of a huge, belated birthday celebration, which, predictably, never materialized. Lily had been happy to see her parents, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being used. I was sorting through the mail that had accumulated on my kitchen counter when I saw it. A thick, cream-colored envelope. It was addressed to Ethan, with a return address from a bank I didn't recognize. He often used my address for official correspondence, sometimes to avoid Sarah seeing things, or just out of convenience, claiming he was between places or too busy to update his address. I usually just put his mail aside, a silent testament to his disorganization, but the official look of this one, combined with its thickness, made me pause. My curiosity and a growing unease pricked at me. I tore it open, expecting some kind of bill he wanted to hide, or perhaps some junk mail he'd forgotten to reroute. Instead, a stack of glossy bank statements and credit card receipts spilled onto the counter. My eyes scanned the first few lines, then widened in horror. The Venetian Resort, Las Vegas. Bellagio Casino. High Roller Observation Wheel. Dates from last Saturday, my birthday. The amounts were staggering. Thousands, tens of thousands, my inheritance. My hands started to tremble, the papers rustling like dry leaves. This wasn't urgent business or a networking event. This was a lavish, irresponsible trip to Las Vegas, paid for with the money I had sacrificed everything for. The money I had given him to get back on his feet, to secure his family's future. The money that was supposed to be his fresh start. A cold, hard rage began to build in my chest, pushing out the lingering hurt and disappointment. I felt a surge of nausea, a sickening realization of the depth of his betrayal. He hadn't just used my money. He had lied to my face on my birthday and left me to babysit his child while he gambled and partied with my future. I didn't even bother calling. I grabbed the stack of damning evidence, shoved it into a bag, and drove straight to Ethan's house. My knuckles rapped sharply on his door, a sound far louder than my usual polite knock. Sarah answered, her eyes wide with surprise. "Andrea, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. I pushed past her, my eyes scanning the living room until they landed on Ethan, sprawled on the sofa, watching TV. Lily was playing quietly on the floor nearby. "Get Lily out of here," I said, my voice dangerously low, barely recognizable even to myself. Sarah, sensing the shift in my demeanor, quickly ushered Lily into her bedroom, closing the door behind them. Ethan slowly pushed himself upright, a wary look on his face. "Hey, Andrea, what's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." I pulled the envelope from my bag, the paper still rustling as I threw them onto the coffee table in front of him. They fanned out, a stark display of his deceit. "This is what's going on, Ethan," I spat, my voice trembling with suppressed fury. "Your urgent business, Joe. Your networking event. This is my inheritance, gambled away in Las Vegas, while I was stuck watching your daughter on my birthday." His face went pale. He glanced at the statements, then back at me, his usual charm completely gone, replaced by a defensive sneer. "What are you talking about? That's private. You had no right to open my mail." "Your mail? It was sent to my address, Ethan, because you're too irresponsible to sort your own life out. And even if it wasn't, it's my money you blew. The money I gave you for a fresh start, not a Vegas vacation." I felt tears welling up, not of sadness, but of pure, unadulterated anger. "How could you, Ethan? How could you lie to me like that, on my birthday?" He stood up, his posture aggressive, his voice rising. "Oh, so now it's about your birthday? It's always about you, isn't it, Andrea? Always the martyr, always the one sacrificing everything. You gave me that money. It was a gift. You wanted to help, remember? You wanted to be the hero. His words were like daggers, cutting deep into the raw wound of my betrayal. A gift? The hero? He saw my generosity, my love, as a weakness to be exploited, a bottomless well of resources to be drained. He didn't see me as a sister, but as a mere financial lifeline, a convenient solution to his self-made problems. The humiliation burned, a hot flush spreading across my face. It was a loan, Ethan. I practically screamed, my voice cracking. A loan. And you signed an agreement. You promised you'd pay it back. You promised you'd use it responsibly. Promises, promises, he scoffed, waving his hand dismissively. You just wanted to control me, didn't you? You always do. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? The perfect sister, always bailing out her screw-up brother. His words, intended to wound, instead ignited a spark of something new within me. The shame, the hurt, the anger, they coalesced into a fierce, unyielding resolve. He saw me as a financial lifeline? Fine. Then I would cut the cord. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to be steady, even though my entire body was shaking. You know what, Ethan? You're right. I'm better than this. And I'm done. I'm done being your safety net. I'm done being your ATM, and I'm done being your fool. I pointed a trembling finger at the scattered statements. You will pay me back every single cent, every last one. And this time, I'm not asking. I'm demanding. The words hung in the air, thick with unspoken threats and shattered trust. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my self-respect. It was the first step, a terrifying but necessary leap towards setting boundaries and taking back control of my life. The war had begun. The drive back to my apartment after confronting Ethan was a blur. My hand still trembled on the steering wheel, and my jaw ached from clenching it so hard. I walked into my quiet living room, the space that usually felt like a sanctuary, and it suddenly felt cold, empty. The silence was deafening, amplifying the echoes of Ethan's cruel words. Always the martyr. Always the one sacrificing everything. You just wanted to control me. I sank onto the sofa, the vaguest statement still clutched in my hand. My mind replayed the entire confrontation, scene by scene. His pale face, the defensive sneer, the way he twisted my generosity into an accusation of control. It was a vicious blow, not just to my finances, but to my very identity. I had always prided myself on being the reliable one, the supportive sister, the one who held things together. Now, that image was shattered, replaced by the humiliating realization that I had been, as he put it, his fool. The initial white-hot rage began to cool, replaced by a dull ache of profound sadness. Not for the money, not entirely, but for the loss of the brother I thought I knew, the family bond I had cherished. It felt like a death, a final severing of ties I had desperately tried to mend. After what felt like an eternity, I finally picked up my phone. My fingers hovered over James's contact. He was the only one who truly understood, who had seen through Ethan's charm long before I had. I needed his steady voice, his unwavering support. "Hey," I managed, my voice hoarse. "Andrea? What's wrong? You sound awful," James said immediately, his concern palpable. I took a shaky breath. "It's Ethan. I found out about Vegas. He blew the inheritance, all of it, on my birthday. The words stumbled out, raw and painful. I recounted the confrontation, the statements, his cruel accusations. James listened without interruption, his silence a comforting presence on the other end of the line. "I'm so sorry, Andrea," he said softly when I finished. "I know how much that money meant to you, and how much you wanted to help him. But he crossed a line, a big one." "He called it a gift," I whispered, the humiliation still fresh. "Said I just wanted to be the hero." "He's projecting, Andrea. He's lashing out because he got caught. You were generous. You were loving. He exploited that. Don't let him twist it into something it wasn't." His words were a balm, validating my feelings, confirming that I wasn't crazy for feeling this betrayed. "What are you going to do?" "I told him I'd make him pay it back," I said, a flicker of that earlier resolve returning. "Every cent. I have the loan agreement he signed." "Good. You absolutely should," James affirmed. "Don't let him get away with this. You deserve better." After talking to James, a sense of clarity began to emerge from the emotional fog. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about reclaiming my self-worth. I pulled out the loan agreement from my files, the document Ethan had signed months ago, acknowledging the $50,000 as a formal loan. I remembered how casually he'd signed it, barely glancing at the terms, eager to get his hands on the money. He probably thought it was just a formality, something I'd never enforce. He was wrong. I spent the next morning researching financial advisors and lawyers. I needed professional help, someone who could guide me through the legal maze. I found a local firm with good reviews and made an appointment for the following afternoon. As I prepared for the meeting, gathering all the documents, the loan agreement, the Vegas statements, even old bank transfers showing the rent payments and grocery money, I started seeing a pattern. It wasn't just the inheritance. It was years of subtle manipulation, of my kindness being weaponized against me. The safety net comment, the worry about money too much joke, being excluded from family outings. They weren't isolated incidents. They were all part of a larger narrative. A narrative where I was the ever-giving, ever-forgiving sister, and Ethan was the charming, irresponsible brother who could always count on me to clean up his messes. I realized he hadn't just taken my money. He had taken my time, my energy, my emotional peace. He had systematically chipped away at my boundaries, making me feel guilty for even considering my own needs. At the lawyer's office, the atmosphere was calm and professional, a stark contrast to the emotional chaos of the past few days. The lawyer, a kind but no-nonsense woman named Ms. Evans, listened patiently as I laid out the story, presenting the documents. She reviewed the loan agreement carefully. "This is a legally binding document, Andrea," she said, her voice firm. "Ethan signed it, acknowledging the funds as a loan with repayment terms. You have a very strong case." Hearing her say it, so matter-of-factly, was incredibly empowering. It wasn't just my hurt feelings. It was a legitimate legal claim. Her validation and the clear path forward she outlined felt like a heavy weight lifting from my shoulders. I wasn't just a victim of betrayal. I was a woman with legal rights, capable of standing up for herself. The stirrings of empowerment, faint at first, now began to pulse with a quiet, determined strength. I was ready to fight. The meeting with Ms. Evans, my lawyer, was a turning point. She laid out the legal strategy with a calm efficiency that was both reassuring and empowering. "The loan agreement is solid, Andrea," she explained, tapping a pen on the document. "Ethan's signature, the specified amount, the repayment terms. It's all there. We have a clear path to reclaim your funds." She outlined the process. First, a formal demand letter, then mediation if necessary, and finally, legal action if he refused to comply. It felt incredibly validating to hear her speak with such confidence. For so long, I had felt like my feelings were just that, feelings. Now they were backed by legal precedent, by a system designed to ensure fairness. Beyond the inheritance, Andrea, Miss Evans continued, "we can also consider documenting the other financial support you've provided. While those might be harder to legally enforce as loans without formal agreements, they certainly paint a picture of Ethan's financial reliance on you. It could strengthen our position in negotiations." That suggestion resonated deeply. It wasn't just about the $50,000 anymore. It was about acknowledging the years of smaller, unreciprocated gestures. I spent the next few days meticulously going through my old bank statements and emails. I found records of rent payments directly to Ethan's landlord, transfers for groceries, Lily's school supplies, and even a few emergency car repairs. Each entry was a small, quiet sacrifice that had gone unappreciated, often taken for granted. As I compiled the evidence, a startling realization hit me. Ethan's entire financial life, for years, had been propped up by me. The urgent business ventures, the big breaks he was always chasing, they all seemed to fail, and each time I was there to catch him. It wasn't just that he relied on me. He expected it. He had built his life on the assumption that I would always be his safety net. This wasn't just about recovering my money. It was about flipping the power dynamic. For so long, I had felt beholden to him, to the idea of family loyalty, to the hope that he would eventually change. Now, I held the cards. The evidence I was gathering wasn't just for a lawyer. It was for me, a tangible representation of my unwavering support and his equally unwavering irresponsibility. The contrast between how Miss Evans and her team treated me and how my own family had was stark. At the law firm, I was treated with respect, my concerns taken seriously, my story validated. They saw me as a client with a legitimate claim, not as Andrea, the one who worries too much about money. There was an urgency in their actions, a clear path forward that felt incredibly empowering. It was a stark contrast to the dismissive jokes, the casual exclusions, and the blatant exploitation I'd endured from Ethan, and by extension, the passive acceptance from the rest of my family. I remember one afternoon, sitting in Miss Evans's office, reviewing a draft of the demand letter. It was formal, direct, and left no room for ambiguity. It detailed the loan, the breach of agreement, and the expectation of immediate repayment. Reading it, I felt a surge of pride, mixed with a lingering sadness. This wasn't the way I ever wanted things to go with my brother, but it was necessary. "This is a strong letter, Andrea," Ms. Evans said. "It clearly states your position and outlines the consequences. We'll send it certified mail to Ethan and a copy to Sarah, as she's also a part of his household." I nodded, my resolve hardening. Sending it to Sarah felt like another painful step. But she was his wife, complicit in his lifestyle, even if passively. She needed to know the gravity of the situation. As I walked out of the law firm that day, the Maplewood sun felt different on my face. It wasn't just the light, it was my perspective that had shifted. My past actions, once viewed through the lens of selfless love, now appeared as a series of enabling acts, but they also affirmed my right to justice. I had given, and given, and given. Now it was time to reclaim, not just the money, but my self-respect, my boundaries, and my own future. The clarity was painful, but liberating. The truth, once unveiled, was a powerful weapon, and I was finally ready to wield it. The demand letter landed in Ethan's mailbox a few days later. I didn't get a call from him immediately, but I felt a shift in the air, a quiet tension settling over Maplewood, even though no one else knew the full extent of what was happening. I, however, was already taking decisive steps to secure my own future. First, I contacted my bank and froze the joint savings account Ethan and I still technically shared, a remnant from a time when we talked about pooling resources for a hypothetical family business. It had mostly sat dormant, but the thought of him potentially accessing it, even a small amount, filled me with dread. It was a small but significant act of self-preservation. Next, I updated my will. It was a document I hadn't thought about much since I first drafted it years ago, listing Ethan as a primary beneficiary. Now, with Ms. Evans's guidance, I removed him entirely, redirecting everything to a charity I deeply admired and to Lily, held in trust until she turned 25. It felt like a powerful statement, a final severing of the financial ties that had bound me to his irresponsibility. This wasn't about spite. It was about protecting my legacy, ensuring my hard-earned assets would benefit those who truly deserved it, or at least wouldn't be squandered. The phone call from Ethan finally came 2 days after the letter arrived. His voice was laced with a desperate panic I'd rarely heard from him. "Andrea, what is this? This letter from your lawyer? Are you serious?" he demanded, his usual charm replaced by a frantic edge. "You can't do this. This is insane. We're family." "It's a demand for repayment, Ethan," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil I felt inside. "You signed a loan agreement. You blew the money. Now you pay it back." But I don't have that kind of money. You know I don't. Where am I supposed to get $50,000? His panic was palpable, a stark contrast to his dismissive attitude during our confrontation. The gravity of his actions was finally sinking in. "That's your problem, Ethan, not mine," I replied, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and coldness. "You should have thought about that before you went on a Vegas vacation with my inheritance. The agreement states clear repayment terms. You have 30 days to make the first payment, or we proceed with legal action." He sputtered, "Legal action? You'd really sue your own brother? What would Mom and Dad say? Grandma Ruth?" "They'll say I'm protecting myself from a brother who stole my future," I countered, the words sharp. "And frankly, Ethan, I'm done caring what they say. I'm doing what's right for me." The conversation ended with him hanging up in a huff, but I knew I had made my point. The safety net was gone. Later that evening, my phone rang again. It was Sarah. Her voice was quiet, apologetic. "Andrea, I saw the letter. I'm so sorry. I didn't know he was going to Vegas with that money, I swear." "You knew he was going somewhere, Sarah," I said, my tone firm. "And you knew it wasn't urgent business. You stood by while he lied to me on my birthday." "I know, and I feel terrible. she admitted, a genuine tremor in her voice. He can be so persuasive. And I wanted to believe him. For Lily's sake, I wanted him to finally get it together. Wanting him to get it together doesn't excuse enabling him, Sarah, I said, a hint of weariness in my voice. This is on him, and I'm done being the one who cleans up his messes. Please, Andrea, don't do this, she pleaded. Think about Lily. If he loses everything, what about her? I am thinking about Lily, I said. And I'm thinking about breaking this cycle of irresponsibility. He needs to face the consequences of his choices. This isn't just about the money. It's about accountability. The pressure continued over the next few days. My parents called, their voices tinged with a mix of concern and thinly veiled disapproval. Andrea, are you sure about this? Family helps family, my mom said, echoing the mantra I'd grown up with. Can't you just work something out? He's your brother. I've been helping him for years, Mom, I replied, my patience wearing thin. And he just gambled away my entire inheritance after lying to me on my birthday. This isn't helping. This is enabling, and I'm not doing it anymore. Even Grandma Ruth called, her voice softer, more understanding, but still with a hint of the old family dynamic. He's a fool, that boy, she sighed. But he's still family, Andrea. Don't let this tear you all apart. He tore us apart, Grandma, I corrected gently. I'm just picking up the pieces. Despite the familial pressure, I remained steadfast. Each call, each plea, only strengthened my resolve. I was no longer the naive, accommodating Andrea. I was a woman driven by the imperative to protect myself, to reclaim what was rightfully mine, and to finally set the boundaries that should have been in place years ago. The path ahead was lonely, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like it was truly my own. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal back and forth. Ethan, faced with the undeniable reality of the loan agreement and the threat of legal action, eventually capitulated. The first repayment check arrived, a smaller sum than the total, but a payment nonetheless. I stared at the numbers, a mix of triumph and weariness washing over me. It wasn't the joyful reunion I'd once dreamed of, but it was a tangible step towards reclaiming what was mine. With the initial payment secured and a clear repayment plan established through Mrs. Evans, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. It was as if a heavy cloak of responsibility had finally been lifted. The first thing I did was start looking for a new place. My apartment in Maplewood, once a symbol of stability, now felt tainted by the countless family dinners, the unspoken expectations, and the echoes of Ethan's casual dismissals. I found a cozy apartment across town, in a quieter neighborhood, just a short drive from my job. It had a small balcony overlooking a park, and the sunlight streamed into the living room in the mornings. Moving was cathartic. I carefully unpacked my boxes, each item placed with intention. A new bookshelf for my growing collection of novels. A vibrant painting for the living room wall, soft throws for the sofa. It was a space that reflected me, not the safety net, Andrea, but Andrea, the woman building her own life on her own terms. My friendships, particularly with James, blossomed in this new environment. Without the constant drain of Ethan's crises, I had more time, more energy, and more emotional space to invest in relationships that truly reciprocated my generosity. James and I started a weekly dinner tradition, exploring new restaurants, or simply cooking together at my new place. Our conversations were no longer dominated by my family drama. Instead, we talked about our careers, our dreams, and the simple joys of everyday life. He was a steady, unwavering presence, a true friend who had seen me through the darkest parts of this ordeal. My family, however, was still grappling with the fallout. Ethan, forced to confront his financial reality, had taken on extra shifts at a local warehouse, a job he previously would have dismissed as beneath him. Sarah, I heard through the grapevine, was trying to manage their household budget more strictly and had started working part-time again. The stability I had tried to provide them for years, they were now forced to build for themselves. It was a painful lesson, but a necessary one. Lily still came to visit sometimes, usually with Sarah, or occasionally with Grandma Ruth. Those visits were bittersweet. Lily, innocent and bright, was a constant reminder of the family I loved and the fractured relationship with her father. I cherished our time together, reading stories, playing games, trying to shield her from the adult complexities that had fractured her family. I knew Ethan would have to work hard to earn back my trust, and more importantly, to become the responsible father Lily deserved. That journey was his to make, and I could only hope he would eventually choose the right path. One crisp autumn evening, a few months after moving into my new place, I stood on my balcony, a warm mug of tea in my hands. The sky was painted with hues of orange and purple, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves in the park below. The city hummed with a quiet energy, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil that had once consumed me. I thought about the past year, the betrayal, the anger, the difficult confrontations. It had been a brutal awakening, but also a profound transformation. I had learned that love, even familial love, did not mean tolerating betrayal. It meant setting boundaries, demanding respect, and sometimes making incredibly difficult choices to protect your own well-being. A serene smile touched my lips. The peace I felt wasn't the absence of conflict, but the quiet strength of having navigated it. I had reclaimed my financial stability, yes, but more importantly, I had reclaimed my self-respect. The future stretched out before me, unwritten, but filled with the promise of my own making. I gazed at the horizon, a sense of quiet dignity settling deep within my soul. The safety net was gone, but in its place, I had built a sturdy foundation for myself. And that, I realized, was far more valuable.